In this episode,
Our guest is Bernard Mackenzie. He's actually a manager at the NIE Wellness Centre. Recently, we actually had a very, very big abuse case.
Right, so I think these are some signs that as a community we need to look out for.
Why do we suddenly sound so defensive? Back then, in my time when I was actually in school, we used to have public caning.
The views, opinions, and statements expressed by guests on Not Your Old Uncle podcast are theirs alone and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Authentic Legacy Media.
With this, let's move on to about abuse, because I think the two of them are actually a little bit related.
There is definitely some level of correlation.
So when you're actually talking about feeling withdrawn and looking a little bit down, sometimes it can also be a sign that the particular person is actually undergoing abuse.
Yep, definitely. I mean, it really depends what kind of abuse we are looking at, right? It could be verbal abuse, physical abuse,
And
sexual abuse.
to a certain extent, bullying is also a form of abuse.
Definitely. I mean, it's one way to look at it, right? It's a form of abuse in its own rights and its own ways.
Recently, we actually had a very, very big abuse case. I'm not very familiar with the name of the child, but I know that the influencer was actually
The biological father.
What do you think about such a case, and as a school counselor and a person working with NIE, what do you think about such a case, and how can we actually process this?
I mean, to be very honest, when I read that case, it was definitely very sad to see. I mean, in my personal view, losing one life is losing one too many life, right? And she's not the first child we have lost due to abuse. If you look at our history of child abuse, we have lost a couple of kids.
Very unfortunate.
Very unfortunately, we have lost, and most often, this is not an abuse by a third party, right? It's most often the kids trust these adults, and they have at least one of them happen to be a biological parent. So it is very sad to have lost this person.
But not necessarily always the perpetrator is always a biological parent, right?
Yeah, not necessarily.
Yeah.
I'm not saying not necessarily, but you see, even if they are not biological parents, this becomes an adult that the child trust. See, a child trusts an adult somehow, for the weirdest of reason, believes that you're going to protect me, believe that you're going to take care of me, believe when you hurt me, it's for my own good. Probably some children may convince themselves that, oh yeah, you're doing this because it's for my own good.
Right.
I don't know where they get it, but somehow maybe they convince themselves.
Right. But as well as I realized that when you're younger, you have a tendency to actually trust more.
Absolutely.
And maybe because of all these things that happen to us, we tend to trust less.
Probably we trust less on a few things. I think we struggle to trust people. Right. We try to keep everybody in an arm's length, or even more than that. And I think then it goes to then it overflows to when the kids are in school and everything. It might overflow as a bullying case. Right? It might overflow, right?
As in the person who's actually being abused.
When they go to school, they might just do it to another person.
So they might become the bully. So that's the relationship as well.
Yeah. So there could be a possibility of that. Right. So it's I think the biggest struggle that I have always had when I read such cases, of course, one struggle is, I mean, as a parent, I always ask myself this question, that how could a parent do this, or an adult who is grown up, this is not right, and how come you're doing this? And of course, then that leads to the next question of, I wonder what was your life? What have you gone through?
That's a very counseling perspective.
Yeah, right. Like, what have you gone through?
That's what we often do, but apparently it is not a common thing.
Yeah, it's not a common thing, right? So I think that's one perspective that I always wonder. I think the other perspective I also always wonder, how is it that when the neighbors and people around in the community see that or kind of sense it, but for the weirdest of reason didn't bring it up.
Right.
You get what I mean? Like, and today in this time and age where we are all so connected with technology, but somehow we are all disconnected as well.
Okay, so they don't bring it up,
Mm-hmm.
possibly because of two reasons.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is that they don't want to bring it up, so they are aware of the situation.
Mm.
And the other situation is of which they are absolutely not aware of the situation as well.
Okay, so not aware, then I think suppose we probably need to have more education about it, right? More education about it, like why to create that awareness.
So generally, as a whole, this thing can actually happen to someone that we actually know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if they do see someone, that they should have the awareness of looking for certain signs.
Looking for certain signs. If the child is malnutrition, it's getting all the hurt marks. It's
So
very fearful.
Physical marks.
Physical marks, very probably afraid of going near the perpetrator and whatnot. Right. So I think these are some signs that people, as a community, we need to look out for.
So, for example, what we are talking about is like in the shows where this particular child actually goes to see, let's say, an uncle or something, and then they have sudden reaction saying that I don't like this uncle, I want to move away from the uncle. That's the type of signs that you actually want to take note of.
Yeah. Well, okay. There's many reasons why sometimes kids don't like an uncle or an auntie. There could be many reasons. Abuse may not be the only reason.
Right.
Right.
But that's a possible sign.
That's a possible sign. Then it goes back to the question, like, what's really happening here?
Right.
Like, what did that uncle do? Or what did that auntie do? Right? How did they is that something that they said to you? They treated you? Or they are being very, very loosely using the words. So say, did they touch you inappropriately?
And most of the time, that's where the conversation ends.
Yeah.
Yeah, because most of the time you ask, what did you actually do to her? And say, no, I did this.
Yeah.
And then after that, they'll say, oh, forget it. It's nothing important. Now I'll just dismiss it.
Absolutely.
And that's where the danger is.
Absolutely. Because see, if let's say it was a inappropriate touch, then you're telling the perpetrator that, okay, you walk scot free.
Yeah, and maybe also the thing is that most of the time we actually hear the perpetrator's point of view that oh no lah, it's just that the last time I actually got very, very pissed off with him, and I actually scolded him badly. That's why he doesn't like me. But we don't really listen to the child's point of view.
Correct. So I think it's also very important to hear it from the child's perspective. Like, so what really happened?
Right.
Right. And then like what you said, right? It went from we were talking about restorative practice then, right? Okay, so this is assuming there's no abuse. Maybe the uncle really like not happy with something, then scolded the child. And like pour water, how come you're so careless? Then child maybe being naughty over here, loosely using certain words like maybe child a bit hypersensitive. Oh, this uncle every time don't like me, every time scold me. Right? So I mean, if there's a possibility to talk about it, then talk about it. Right? So this is taking it lightly. But if there's really a case of abuse, then that needs to be addressed. Like for an example, like I told you earlier, I was born in the 70s, right? I was a 70s kid. And if a kid at that point of time, like if lies or do something,
we shall actually justify that this was back then.
Back then. It was back then, not now. Back then. Like,
why do we suddenly sound so defensive?
No, I need to qualify, you see.
Right.
And I remember, like, I've heard of cases where, and I was a kid growing up, like, oh, like parents, heating up the spoon and, like, put like a scar and to tell that, oh, the scar will remind you not to lie. And today when I look at it, that's abuse.
Right.
So you see, and back then that was seen as acceptable.
Right. They used to sell cane, right, in all the provision shops and everything. So it's that common in Singapore.
Yeah, it was like, and some parents are being naughty over here. Back then, they were very creative. No cane, never mind, take hanger. Anything they can get their hand on becomes a weapon. Right. And if you go to school and you tell your friends that you're not hit, your other friends were like, what's wrong with your parents?
Yeah, actually, we used to have in my time, not now, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, in my time when I was actually in school, we used to have public caning.
Absolutely. Right. Public gaming was like kind of a common size. So like who's up? Who's up for the challenge, right? Yeah. So you see, all that has changed because now we are able to see the emotional impact of it.
Right.
Right. So when it comes to abuse, it's also the same thing. I mean, in some cases, okay, this is I'm quoting a book. It's a book called one of my personal favorites to read is The Boy Called It. Right. In some cases where this was based on US anyway. Some people might even say that okay, because you don't do academically well, so therefore there's no lunch, no dinner for you. To me, that's abuse as well. You are denying the child of basic rights of food, or shelter, or belittling the child, or disgracing the child, right? So I think that to me that kind of constitutes abuse. But I think one of the questions that we need to ask ourselves as fellow practitioners is to ask ourselves that how often does this happen? Right? I'm not saying that just because it happens once is not an abuse, right? It is a form of abuse as well. And I think being a school counselor back then for a good number of years, I would say that should there be such a suspect event, right? When you suspect that, hey, I think there's some level of abuse, at least have a chat with the parents. And at least to find out that what were you thinking when you did all these things? And we kind of constitute that, hey, this is abuse to a certain extent.
So we are actually also talking about children's not really speaking up. I think we can sort of understand why they don't speak up, isn't it?
I think one of the reasons they don't speak up because they don't know. Because they think this is normal, right? Like earlier we were talking about it and I was sharing with you, right? Like back in the 70s and the 60s, a child is being abused, like, like heat up a spoon and they're putting a scar and everything. That's almost seen like a normal practice, right? So a good number of kids, I think they don't even know that this is abuse and this is not acceptable, right? So they just go with the flow, probably thinking that this is what happens in everybody's house.
So how can we actually make them a little bit more aware?
Okay, I think it's very important to educate not only the kids, but also the parents to have a better understanding of what abuse really means and what are the possible consequences.
What does abuse really mean?
Okay,
When we are talking about abuse, are we just talking about the cane?
I think I have always kind of put it in an angle of what's the frequency like that it happens? Is it happening almost on an everyday basis? Then that something is wrong, right? I'm not saying that as a parent you cannot scold your kids. Going back to that statement, if you spare the rod, you spoil the child. But I think I have an extra version of it, an additional version of it, but use the rod sparingly, right? You don't have to hit the kid, right? But I think work with something that is that probably like grounding them or taking away their privileges might be helpful. But at the same time, as a child who grew up with a mom who was that's what she knew, so I can't blame her. That's what she knew, right? Is to smack, right. So as a child who grew up with that, and have I been in a situation when I am pissed off with my kids to have a tendency to smack? Yes, definitely. I have done that. And I'm not proud of it. And I'm definitely not proud of it.
I have no experience of it, so I'm very happy about it.
Right. So not really proud of it, but I think it has taken a lot for me to reflect on it and try to reduce it to almost reduce it. So maybe now I will go like, I'm going to smack you, that kind of thing, but don't do it.
But when we actually talk about abuse, a lot of times people actually confuse it to be just physical abuse.
Yeah.
But there are actually other forms of abuse other than physical as well, right?
Absolutely. So there's physical abuse, there's verbal abuse, there's, of course, sexual abuse.
Right.
Right.
And there's actually things like neglect as well.
Absolutely. That means the child does not receive what the child is supposed to receive. Example, food or shelter, right? Food, shelter, water, going to school, right? Yeah. So all these things was definitely constituted as neglect as well.
Right. So if we are actually parents, of course, we need to be actually aware of these so that we don't do this to the child. But for some people who are already doing it to the child, obviously, they would be unlikely to actually educate the child about this as well. So how does that go?
Okay. So see, if the parents, assuming the parents are not aware, then I think it's very important to educate the parents as well,
Right.
about what constitutes neglect. Okay, for just going back to like when I was growing up, right?
Right.
Where if today, if I go, my mom is 84 this year, if I were to go and tell her now what I did, what she did, like she smacked me and everything, would have been seen as abuse. She would have probably said, "No, what abuse are you talking about?" And she'll tell me, like, "You turned out fine. What's wrong with you?" Which is very understandable,
Right.
Because she has no understanding.
But that's another question I have for you another day. But did you really turn out fine?
I had my challenges.
my point is that actually, if you did have been a victim of abuse when you were younger, be it neglect or verbal abuse or anything, you might actually look fine. Which there are a lot of people who are actually like that.
Absolutely.
But they actually do have a lot of hurt inside that's unresolved.
Absolutely. So, I mean, from a counseling term, we will say that this is early childhood woundings, lah.
Right.
Right. We carry this wound. Right. So unless the parents themselves try to, I mean, not say try, but at least explore to heal from this, then other than that, there's no change that's going to happen. I think I've noticed quite a bit of parents who somehow, when they become parents, one of the statements that most often runs at the back of their head is like, "I will not be like the parent like how my parents were to me." And the funniest thing is that when we are pushed to the shaft, we really transform into them. All right?
Because that's what we learned.
Absolutely, because that's familiarity.
Right.
Right? In terms of the words that we use, in terms of the behavior that we portray, and so on and so forth. Or like, okay, like like what you said, right? Displaying neglect.
Right.
Because maybe if that is what I've experienced.
What exactly is neglect?
Neglect is what probably I would constitute to say is everything that the basic needs for the child is not met. Right? No water, no food, no access for education.
Yes, but supplying of food and giving food to the child is generally quite good in Singapore context. But other than actually the basic fundamental needs of food and drink,
Shelter, water.
and shelter, I think nowadays we also have other needs, right? So like sense of belonging, sense of safety. Yeah, so are those also constituting neglect?
I think the sense of belonging part can be a little challenging to access,
Right.
to assess, right? It can be a little challenging, right? Because belonging is such a broad construct. So I think first and foremost, we need to define what does belonging even means. What is the underpinning factors before we talk about this is what belonging means. I think on top of like, apart from food and water that you're talking about, is the care and concern. Does the child feel loved in the house?
Right.
Right. Does the child does the child feel loved in that environment?
Right.
Right. There is care and concern. Right. So I think all that also would constitute neglect if the child is not receiving those things.
Right. I do actually remember a couple of examples last time of people actually saying things like, I actually do have kids because I want them to actually support me when I'm old, and they actually tell that to their kids themselves.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that becomes like a really big wounding to the kid. So that is actually also in a sense constituting neglect.
I think that's actually quite tough to constitute as neglect.
Really?
Quite tough. I won't call that a neglect. That sounds more like a return of investment. Like, I have like 3 kids, like a return of
Right.
investment. So the
Right,
reason
right,
I'm
right.
investing in you, so the next time when I'm old, which you see, that means.
But doesn't that actually mean to a certain extent a lack of love?
Okay, maybe it doesn't go with the perspective of neglect, but it tells probably like a subtle message to the child that you exist because of you owe me, right? So you owe me. So that means there's no love here, right? The child may interpret it as there's no love over here. The only thing that you have is that you owe me. The reason you exist is because of me. So better have return of investment.
Right.
So I think that will, but I think we may not constitute as abuse, but it may contribute to that relationship. That my relationship is just transactional.
If I'm a bystander, I'm not involved in this particular abuse relationship, how can I help if I actually find that somebody could be actually a victim of abuse?
So you're looking at the victim, right?
Right.
I think as a bystander, especially if you're a neighbor and whatnot, I think in our local context, I think that becomes a little challenging. You hear a case of the father saying that, the reason you exist so you can be a return of investment to me. Then if we go, no, you are a worthy person. You're worthwhile. The child will be like, who are you? What's happening over here?
Right.
Right. I think it can be a little awkward. Right. It could be a little awkward. I think if it comes from a significant individual to say that they exist for a reason, and the reason is not a return of investment, but they have other things, they are worth what they believe what they are worth, and what's they are building their own self-esteem and self-worth. I think that's going to be the cycle I mean, that could be the key to break that kind of verbal cycle, verbal abuse lah.
Right. So that is actually in terms of psychological abuse. But what happens if it is a clear case of which the person actually has bruises and marks all over, and you know that something is going on?
I think it's going to be quite tough. I think even if a random adult go and ask, I think it's going to be. I think most teenagers or kids might just pull back.
So do I just keep a blind eye?
No, I will definitely not say keep a blind eye. And I'm just going to build up on what I just said earlier in terms of they may pull back for few factors. And one of the contributing factor is these still my parents. These are still my family. It's if I were to go and make a report right now, even if I know that this is abuse, but if I go and make a report, that means I'm betraying my family because they are still my family.
Right. So it's complicated.
It's very complicated, especially from a child's point of view, because they are still my family. And the next question is, then what's going to happen to my family? Or what's going to happen to me? Am I going to go? Where am I going to stay? What's going to happen to me in the larger perspective?
So there's needs involved.
Yes, there's needs involved as well. So I think as an adult, I think if we were to notice somebody in the neighborhood, we have noticed, I think one angle to look at is probably we could reach out to some of the social service agencies within our community. And some of these social service agencies do quite a bit of outreach work. Right. And when they're doing outreach work, that's a good platform to connect with these families as well, or these youths who are going through such challenging moments.
But there's so many social service agencies out there. So how do I know which one is the right one? Are there a couple of them which are actually more well known?
Okay, I think so one trick to find out which is the agency that works within the particular estate is to go to the MSF website. Right. It tells you exactly which is the social service agency that's around that area, that boundary.
Okay.
Right, that supports their boundary.
Okay. So basically what you're saying is that our ministry, MSF, does allocate different territories.
Yes.
And every single territory has someone who's servicing you.
Yeah. To be naughty, I think Singapore is it's a very blessed nation in that way. And I don't think any other nation can say that unless I stand corrected by saying this. I think for every disadvantaged family or individual,
Right.
we at least have 3 social service agencies to support them.
Okay.
Okay. For an example, if you talk about like within the western the western part of the island, you have probably Fayette Family Service Center, you have Care Corner, you have Lakeside. These are all social service agencies.
Right.
Some of the other agencies that works very closely with youths, Touch Community Services, Montfort Care. Right. So there's quite a number of social service agencies in our country. So we can either reach out to them. I mean, we can reach out to them whether they have any support along that line. If all that fails, and assuming this is a person, like, I'm not going to call all this person and try to find out what's going to happen.
Right.
Right. It can happen, right? Because there's so many, I don't know who to call, right? I think the one hotline could be just calling the MSF hotline itself, right? Or in some cases, if you think there is violence in the family or there is any form of abuse in that family, I think calling the National Anti-Violence Hotline can be a good option too.
Okay, sure. So the National Anti-Violence Hotline would be one of the best places that we should actually approach.
Yeah. So at least we can call and probably they can give us a little bit of guidance. Okay, so and they can do some connection for us.
Do you like our podcast so far? Do remember to like, share, and subscribe.
In our next episode.
What's sexual grooming? Once something that actually goes on that I'm not very sure of as a child, what's the first thing I should do?
I always ask this question of the reason, what makes them to cut. Even the way they cut says a lot about their mental state.